Hey guys, it's Sandro here with my first modification video today on my 2019 Honda Monkey. I'll be replacing the super soft OEM rear shocks with the upgraded adjustable Ohlins shocks in this install video. As you'll shortly see, there's really not too much to installing the shocks themselves, and not too much needed other than the shocks themselves, a wrench and a torque wrench, and maybe the torque spec for the bolts if you want to do it right and safely. But I'd also recommend having someone with you to give you a quick hand to slip on the shocks, but if not, I'm sure you'll be able to handle it on your own. So the largest part of this video will be showing you how the original shocks behave with both lighter and heavier riders, and then comparing that to the Ohlins shocks later on. And I'm also going to run through all the adjustments of the Ohlins shocks that you can make, and you should really check all those settings yourself before taking the bike out for a test ride. Now you don't need to know my exact weight, but I'm over 100 kilos or well over 200 pounds, and you certainly don't need to know my partner's weight, but she's closer to half my weight. Now with me on the stock rear shocks, they easily bottom out and are just way too bouncy, and I honestly don't feel all that confident with the way they keep traction on the road while I'm riding. But the thing is that even with my partner on the bike, they are still way too soft for her, and she can actually bottom them out as well, which is kind of crazy considering how much lighter and smaller she is. So the truth is that unless a kid is on the bike, these stock shocks aren't going to work for any grown adult. Now I want to quickly mention where I bought the Ohlins shocks, which was from Man in the Box. If you're into mini bikes, and particularly the Honda Grom or Monkey, you've most likely heard of them, as they're really a big part of the mini bike community with some great content on their own YouTube channel and providing a lot of support for that community. So give them a follow and support them, and I'll have some links to them and the shocks in the description box. Now with the Ohlins shocks themselves, they come in a seriously well insulated package. You get a broader owner's manual that goes through all the general adjustments for all their shocks, some cool stickers, a basic installation guide, an adjustment tool for the shocks preload, and a second set of stiffer springs. Now the springs that came pre-installed with mine are the softer springs that are meant for riders under 80 kilos or 170 pounds. And the second pair are for riders over 80 kilograms. The lighter springs are marked with a 012918 number on the end, and the firmer springs are marked with a 022318 number on the end. But you can also see that the firmer springs are also a touch thicker and harder to compress. Now since I'm over 80 kilos, I'll be using the firmer springs, and swapping them out is super easy. You just slightly compress the spring with your fingers, and the top fastener will fall out through a cutout notch. Then just slide the old spring out, slide the new spring in, and slip the top fastener back on till it snaps in place. In most cases when ordering a set of Ohlins shocks, you give the seller your total riding weight and they will be set up and adjusted before they ship out to you. However, my set of shocks weren't, and I'm really not too fussed about it, as in almost all cases you'll still need to adjust the shocks based on the use of the bike, your own riding style, and comfort versus performance preferences. But Ohlins does include some recommended settings that are actually a great starting point. And I really recommend that you do check all those settings and make sure that both your shocks are equally aligned, as mine were definitely not out of the box. Now I'll freeze some of the following frames in the footage to try and clearly show you how these adjustments are made and which way to turn them. The preload is probably the most important setting, or the one you should start with. To give the spring more preload or tension, you turn it clockwise looking from above and counterclockwise for less tension. In general, your goal is to have the spring compress about 30% or so with your weight on it compared to its fully stretched position off the bike. But as I mentioned, the Ohlins recommended settings may be a great start. The compression dampening, which helps absorb bumps in the road, is recommended by Ohlins to be adjusted to 12 clicks. The way you measure this is to turn the adjustment wheel clockwise all the way to the hardest setting and then count 12 little clicks as you turn it counterclockwise to the softer setting marked with S. And the rebound adjustment, which controls how fast or slow the compressed shock will decompress back to its original position, is adjusted in the opposite way compared to the compression knob. And Ohlins recommends 16 clicks for the rebound, so just turn it all the way counterclockwise until it stops clicking, and then count 16 little clicks as you turn it clockwise to increase the rebound rate or speed. So with that little overview on how to adjust the settings all done, let's get to actually installing these shocks on the bike. According to the Honda Monkey service manual, the bolts that hold the rear shocks should be tightened to 29 Newton meters or 21 foot-pounds of torque, so just keep that in mind when retightening the bolts. And you'll also need a 14mm socket. You'll find that the bottom bolt has only one washer on the outer side, while the top bolt has two washers, with the larger washer going in first, followed by the smaller washer and then the bolt. So also keep that in mind when putting them back on. The OEM shock will quite easily slip off, and the shock on the opposite side will still hold the bike up, so no need to worry. Now this is where I did encounter a little trouble. According to the installation guide, and even going by another video that I watched on the install, the Ohlins shock should fit onto one side just as easy as the original shock, as they should be the same length when the Ohlins shock is set to its lowest length. Now I double checked that the Ohlins shock was completely set to its lowest length, and I completely lifted the rear of the bike so that there was no tension or compression on the springs, but it just wouldn't fit in. And as you can see, I even got an extra hand to help me slip it on, but it seemed like the Ohlins shock was just a split millimeter too long, as it was really close but just wouldn't go in. So plan B was to remove the other rear shock on the left, and holding up the rear of the bike, that was easy to do on such a light motorcycle, I gave the Ohlins shock enough length to fit in easily, and it was doubly easy having a helping hand to slip it on while I held the bike up. The second Ohlins shock slipped on like a glove. All the washers and bolts were put back in the correct order, and the nuts were torqued back to the OEM spec. And as I mentioned, overall, it's a really super easy installation. To finish up, I just put together some side-by-side shots here, showing the stock OEM shocks next to the Ohlins shocks, and as you hopefully see, the Ohlins shocks are a massive improvement for both the heavier and lighter riders respectively. And I'll also let you know that since installing the Ohlins shocks and testing them out, I've made some adjustments to all the settings, and they are feeling and handling amazingly, making the bike so much more enjoyable and safer on the road. And I'll lastly add that I think they look fantastic, and I'm just so glad that the Ohlins trademark colour is yellow that perfectly suits my bike. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe to this channel to show your support for these videos, and I'll see you guys soon.